Good morning, everybody. I'm Marco Troisan. I'm the head of faculty of Agrarian, Food, Environmental Sciences. It's a really long name, but I just call it Agrarian Sciences. I want to welcome you all in the name of faculty. I want to thank you for your presence here and thank the speakers for a really interesting conference on a really crucial theme. Agriculture and innovation in general, in every field, are really crucial themes. I do believe that today we will hear more about a really important step in sustainable environmental practices, and that's really important to manage to produce both energy and food at the same time. There's a lot at stake. In the past, there was competition between people who used land to produce energy, even sustainable energy, and people who used land to produce food for livestock, for humans. Today, we'll hear about a new system which managed to solve this problem, and so allowing us to produce both food and energy. This was the theme in the title of Expo 2015, and it looks like we managed to achieve this goal 2 years later, but still it seems that we managed to follow through Expo. So it will be a very interesting day. I think that the speakers will tell you a lot more about this. It's a mobile system mounted on poles, which allows you to be more efficient and to produce more energy more efficiently. Now, I hope that we will manage to copy with photovoltaic panels what leaves already do and become as efficient as nature. Now, I'm a chemist, so for me, it would be the best thing to copy on an industrial scale what plants have been doing for millions of years. Now, I don't want to bore you. I will leave the floor to the speakers. Thank you. Good morning. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I'm Luca Piccino. I work for ASTER. I'm its representative in Piacenza. I will show you briefly what ASTER does in general. Then I will tell you a little bit more about the opportunities in environment and energy. ASTER is a regional consortium of Emilia-Romagna, which involves universities such as Università Cattolica in Piacenza, and also involves the chambers of commerce of the Emilia-Romagna. We also collaborate with all the development agencies of the region to try to develop business, working together with universities and with innovative research centers in Emilia-Romagna. I work in the hub of Piacenza. We have many hubs from Piacenza to Rimini. We have 10 regional hubs. And in the hub in Piacenza, we work with the ENAA, which is a business incubator. Briefly, the work I do is providing information about tenders and opportunities for financing on a regional level and on a national level. I provide first assistance to take part in tenders, to create new startups, or to improve the collaboration between research and sciences and business. We also have networking opportunities. We try to connect businesses or entrepreneurs with universities. This is the website of ASTER. This is a high-tech network which involves all the innovative research centers in the region. They get certified with us, and Università Cattolica has 2 accredited research centers. Our network has some thematic platforms, and as you can see, we also have an environment energy platform. Our goal is to connect people to take part in European projects, to provide information about opportunities to take part in tenders, and so on. Very often, it happens that some research centers don't know that somewhere else someone is developing the same technologies, so we connect them. We have a high-tech network. It's a portal where all the research projects in the region are connected. So you can look for some specific equipment, or you can browse the research projects. Our goal is to favor contacts between the leaders of those research projects, or at least spreading the knowledge of those research projects. So in ASTER we have this high-tech network. You can browse the research projects. This is another website that we manage. It's aimed at startups and to all the people who have some research projects who could have a spin-off or start a business. These are the services that we provide. So you have information, financing, accounting services, engineering services, and work consultants. These are the website of some of our services. We have FIRST, which is a national newsletter. So it provides information about not only financing on a regional level, but also on a national and European level. So it's both a newsletter and a browser. Then we have APRE, which is one of the national info point on European tenders. And then we have some other projects. This is the first newsletter. These are our initiatives, such as the Innovation Fair of the region Emilia-Romagna, which is a showcase for the regional projects on innovation. Then we also favor the participation of SMAO in Berlin and Milan. We have Startup, it's a competition for innovative businesses, and Climate Kick Accelerator. Kick is Knowledge Innovation Communities, and ASTER is the national info point for the European Innovation Center. So we act as a local hub for opportunities in the Climate Kick. Of course, we give particular attention to regional businesses. These are tenders to create Silicon Valley projects. These are some of our promotional activities. We have many of them, both informational and networking. We organize many events where we present the tenders and we try to favor networking between scientists, entrepreneurs, and so on. This is an open opportunity for a climate kick tender called Startup Accelerator. It's about accelerating startups with financing up to 50,000 euros. It provides information, contacts, and some internship. So there are a few steps. They're not bound, so you can take part in the third or second step. Then there is also another financing up to 30,000 euros. That's all. Thank you. We met ASTER in the event of Climate Kick in Rimini, and they provided really crucial support for us. Now, I will introduce myself. I'm Giancarlo Ghidesi. I'm the CEO of REM Tec, and I will be the moderator in this conference. I will kindly ask our speakers to respect our time schedule. I want to thank the head of faculty, who is our host, Professor Marco Trevisan, who allowed us to have this important conference here. I want to thank Professor Maducci, who is our important collaborator. We have been working together for 7 years. He helped us a lot in our project, and he gave us some crucial knowledge and a lot of passion in the project. When he saw our idea, he proposed to collaborate, and that was really important. I want to thank ASTER for the support, the city of Piacenza, who is here presented by the environmental councillor, Mr. Macioppi. And I will ask him to say a few words to tell us what the city of Piacenza thinks about us now. I want to thank you for taking part in this conference, and I want to thank our Japanese guests who came all the way from Osaka to take part in this conference. So they have shown a really will to collaborate. Mr. Takashi and his colleague, they work for Up Farm in Japan. This morning's program is as follows. We'll hear the counselor, and then we'll have 3 speakers. There's a change in the program. So the talk of INEA will be before our break. Then we'll have the coffee break, and then the other speakers will follow up until lunch. Then, after lunch, if the weather will be good, we will go at Castelvetro Piacentino to see our plant, our agrivoltaic plant, and then we will say farewell. I also want to say that we will record this conference, so if someone don't want to be recorded, just say to us and we will not show him or her on camera. Before leaving the floor to the next speaker, I will also say some important words. This is the first conference all on agrivoltaic, and this is the Italian version of agro-photovoltaic. This is the first project in the world of agriculture and energy production. And our pilot plant is here in Piacenza, in Castelvetro Piacentino. We invented agrivoltaic 10 years ago, and the inventor is here with us. 10 years ago, people just didn't think of this possibility. We were the first to have this idea, we worked on it, and then thanks to the project Conto Energia, it became a reality. Now we have 2 pilot plants, one in Mantova and one in Piacenza. Throughout the world we have some other plants in China, and a plant is being built in Japan. I wish that this moment of exchange of knowledge and information and of question and answers will be the starting point for the development of our vision of this technology that we invented 10 years ago. So I will now kindly ask the City Councillor to say a few words. Thank you.
Bene, grazie per l'invito.
Thanks for the invitation. I want to greet you in the name of the city of Piacenza. I'm taking part in this conference as a representative of the city, even though I will have to leave before the end. This conference is organized by REM Tec with the partnership of Università Cattolica di Piacenza and ASTER, and I would like to thank ASTER for the contribution to this event. ASTER is the regional consortium for technological transfer between business and universities. Today's conference has the aim of developing ties between technology and agriculture, between agriculture and sustainable energy. This is a crucial event for stakeholders in this field and for the communities. This is the meeting point of 2 crucial needs, which is food and energy. The fruits of the earth are as precious as the energy that is needed to produce them. This is why research on agriculture is now aimed at experimenting and to find innovative solutions which must be sustainable both for nature and for communities. This is why this project has our attention and our appreciation. We will hear about agrivoltaic today by the representative of REM Tec. This is a project for sustainable energy that allows farmers to produce clean energy while cultivating their land. This project wants to overcome the traditional limits of solar energy with panels on the ground, and it aims also at improving yield thanks to the shadow of the panels. This is why I'm proud to present this project in Piacenza. This project has an international reach in a crucial field such as energy sustainability in agriculture. I think that today we will hear about the best way to combine innovation and community growth. We will hear about a project that makes technology and innovation the key to its success and who patented throughout the world agrivoltaic technology. All the associations that sponsor this event and all the speakers who are here have my gratitude for organizing this high-profile event. Thank you. Now let's begin with our talks. I will now leave the floor to Roberto Angoli, who is a founder of REM Tec and the inventor of the agrivoltaic system. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. He told I'm the inventor, but that's not really true because this project is the result of collaboration of a study group that we financed about 8 years ago with private funding and with the help of the region Lombardia. This project was started to solve a fundamental problem, which is producing clean energy from solar power, while at the meantime managing the fundamental resource to produce solar energy, which is surface land. Land is the fundamental resource for solar energy. This might seem something obvious, but it's true and it's important. We've seen that solar panels have been put on roofs and on agricultural land. When in Italy and in the world we started building solar plants on the land, people have understood that you either use the land to produce solar energy or for agriculture. So producing solar energy with panels on the ground means taking away land from agriculture. And this is a huge problem. This is why for a long time people have criticized solar energy for this reason. Taking away land from agriculture is a huge problem, and that's why many recent European laws usually protect agriculture from land grabbing. So we have this problem: how can we produce clean energy from solar power while still using agricultural land as a surface? So we started this study group who involved people from many fields such as agronomics, landscape architects, engineers, farmers. We will have the opportunity to hear Giovanni Zangrandi, who is a farmer in Piacenza and who took part in the project from the very beginning and who gave us the possibility to have a pilot plant on his fields. This project consists in duplicating the surface, so agricultural surface remains the same, and thanks to agrivoltaic we build another system on the agricultural land where we put our solar panels. They are distributed geometrically. That allows sunlight to reach the soil, and so it doesn't stop plant growth. This is the project. The realization took a lot of time because we had to set all the technicalities such as weight, surface, soil impact. We had to undergo many certifications, many licensing with local administration to build our pilot plant. This was a very long road and a complicated one, but it allowed us to share our project with many specialists, and that allowed us to work through each detail, each implementing detail. I will give you a small example. To get the licensing in Lombardy, we had to collaborate with about 24 organizations. It was a little bit easier here in Emilia-Romagna, but it's a really hard path to licensing. But our system in itself is quite simple. It's poles on the land that allows agricultural machinery to pass through this tractor without any problem. Now I will leave the details for our engineers, who will give you numbers and technical details, and we'll hear about agricultural production. As you can see, it's a really simple structure. It's poles and tensors. It raises above the ground and uses materials in the smartest way possible, because this kind of structure is the one that uses the least materials to sustain the panels and to keep them stable to withstand wind and snow and so on. And most importantly, it allows agricultural activities underneath it. This is the project that we developed for 3 or 4 years. So as you can see, the difference between having agricultural land and land for solar energy is that in our case, in the second case, you take away land from agriculture, but with agrivoltaic, we don't take land away from agriculture, because as you can see, we can still produce agricultural yield from 95% to 105%, so you can even increment agricultural yield and you can produce energy. That means that compared to the ground solar system, agrivoltaic can produce better energy because it's a solar tracking system, and so it can produce energy more effectively. And by more effectively, I mean that our data in our pilot plants shows that we have about 45% more energy compared to a solar system based on the ground. This is almost a virtual use of soil because agricultural activities are not affected. We can go on. This technology can be used in other settings because often it is necessary to have hot houses for agriculture, for really advanced cultures. And as you can see, our technology allows us to avoid modifying the structure because it is independent from what is underneath it. So it doesn't matter whether there is a field or a hothouse underneath our system. Here we are talking about our company, REM Tec, who is the holder of the patent, who is a true Italian enterprise, but which today is also collaborating with a French firm, and that today is working to sell this technology on the international market. As Giancarlo said, as you can see, we have some new plans in China, we have some new plans in Japan, and we carried out some research that allows us to prove that today this system can be applied in Italy even without the subsidies that until 5 years ago the Italian government issued to support clean energy projects. In Italy, it is feasible to have this system. Today, if you have land for agriculture, most of the time the land in itself is not really economically important because, as you can see, agriculture is getting less and less profitable, and producing energy becomes crucial because if we want to produce clean energy, then solar energy is the simplest to use. We carried out a research some time ago that proved that using agricultural land to produce solar energy in the province of Mantova, we could produce energy for the whole region. We are now heading towards electric cars, electric energy to substitute oil cars. To manage to go this way, we will need more clean energy, and this is the path to have more clean energy without taking away agricultural land. Thank you for your attention. I will now leave the floor to the other speakers.
Grazie Roberto. Saluto Assessore, grazie del suo intervento. Passiamo la parola al professor
We now leave the floor to Professor Stefano Maducci,
che ci presenterà appunto
who will present the results of his research,
con noi e con grande passione da 6 anni.
which he carried out with us for 6 years. Thank you. Yes, it's been quite a long time, so I will show you the results that we collected in 6 years of research. This research finally brought some really good results, and I'm really glad to present them to you. We published our research in a journal. This is the scientific journal Applied Energy, and even though it's not a publication on agriculture, it's still one of the most important publications on energy. Our research was published recently in this journal. I would like to show you more in detail our results. So I would like to briefly introduce you the setting in which we developed agrivoltaic. We just heard the history of this idea, and now I would like to show you the base for this idea, which is a publication by the Food and Agriculture Organization, a publication about agriculture, energy and climate change. In this publication, the FAO promoted an energy-smart agriculture which uses energy in an efficient way. As you can see, the FAO shows that there is a three-way relationship between agriculture, energy and climate change. We often say that agriculture is affected by climate change, so if we look at the recent years, we have been seeing the effects of this climate change, but at the same time, agriculture in itself contributes to climate change because it's one of the human activities that creates greenhouse gases. But then you can see that agriculture can be part of the solution for climatic change. So we have this relationship between energy and agriculture that is usually explained as the attempt at improving energy efficiency in agriculture. These are the most common research in the last years to improve the use of fertilizers, which sometimes can have high production costs in terms of greenhouse gases, the improvement of water use, or new forms of agriculture such as conservative agriculture to conserve, to preserve soil, or precision agriculture, which is based on improving resource use efficiency. And then we have renewable energy production. We've heard about biogas, we've heard about biomasses for energy production, we've heard about biofuels, or the production of energy thanks to wind or photovoltaics. Today I will compare photovoltaics with biogas, and we will also see how agrivoltaic can improve water use. Now let's move on to the results of our research. We had three main goals in our research. The first was to create a software to simulate farming, to optimize cultures, and also to optimize energy production through agrivoltaics and through cultivating plants under photovoltaic system. Then we also wanted to simulate corn yield in agrivoltaic fields, and then to compare soil use in photovoltaic and in other energy production cultures such as biogas from corn or photovoltaics from ground systems. So this is the focus of our collaboration that started 6 years ago. So when people from REM Tec came to me, they asked me, how can we predict the effect of agrivoltaic system, the shadow they cast on the ground? So we had some tests on the field to measure the effect of shadow on the ground. It's of course hard because we had to compare fields with the agrivoltaic system and fields without it. That's why we developed this software to simulate the situations. This was the first big part of our work. You can see this graph which shows how our software works. It was developed by Mr. Colauzzi. He is a simulation expert. We developed this model to simulate shadows on the field. This is applied math, basically. So we had this software to simulate shadow with various sunlight angles. We used a 10 square meter section, and we calculated the reduction in sun exposure. Here you can see the results. On the left is a graph which represents a day. This is one day in the year of years 1987 and 2004. These were 2 days that were chosen because they are quite different. It was a hot and dry year and then a rainy year. As you can see, the dark area is the area underneath the panels where there is less solar radiation. Then you can see two other graphs. They're really complicated. I don't want to go much in details, but you can see that each pixel of this area is a simulation of plant growth. The yellowish and reddish area are the one with a higher growth rate. So you can see that the red is about 13 tons of corn, and they are higher underneath the shadows, while the bluish area are the one with less yields, and they're the area under direct sunlight exposure. It was a kind of weird result, so we repeated our test many times. But this is the actual result, because when you have a different year, the production is less under the panel compared to area with direct sunlight. So if we have a dry and warm year, the areas underneath the shadows will have a higher yield because they use less water and are not damaged by sunlight. So this is actually a logical result. Then our second goal was to use our simulation models to provide some settings. We just didn't want to calculate the loss of yield, but we wanted to improve the engineering of these plants, and so to compare some possible configuration of the panels. You can have the arrays with tire panels or with larger panels. You can have fixed panels or moving panels. And then we compare the results of these models. These are the results which confirm the precedent results. We had this modeling based on about 39 years of data. We had millions of data collected from the simulation, but I want to show you just some of them. This is the average. You have full light data, and then you have the data for some configurations of the agrivoltaic structure. So you can see that the average is about the same, but then you can see the variability in yield, and under the agrivoltaic system the variability is actually less. This is an important data because it means that cultivating under the agrivoltaic system gives you less variability in yield. This means that the cultivations are more stable. And this is really interesting, keeping in mind climate change, because this allows us to have some agricultural systems which are resilient to climate change. Then we have another graph which is a little bit more complicated, where it is shown the probability of having more yield than is needed. The red line is the one with full light without the agrivoltaic system, and you can see that with agrivoltaic, usually the probability of having over yield is higher, and that the probability is lesser than with full light, only with years of really high yield. Then our third goal was to compare
nella misura in cui produciamo una coltura
photovoltaic system
elettrica rispetto alle due opzioni, quelle che facciamo normalmente, cioè di coltivare il mais separatamente.
was to compare the agrivoltaic system with corn production and two other fields with ground system of solar panels and with corn. This is the usual test we do when we want to compare how cultivations work with two different fields or with a mixed cultivation in just one field. So we measured the production of corn under agrivoltaic and compare it with corn without agrivoltaic, and then we compare energy production with agrivoltaic and energy production on an open field. So we are considering agrivoltaic as a kind of double culture, because it's the same as cultivating two cultures in one field. We have energy and corn. This equation shows that we have a positive interaction of energy production with corn production. These are our final results, and they're really impressive because you can see that we always have a positive result, which is more than 1, and with agrivoltaic you actually have results which are over 2 on average. So you have a higher production than usual. Then I will show you our latest data. We run a test that was to be included in a publication. So if we compare corn with another culture, usually we have a test to see how these two cultures do together or cultivated in a separate fields. Now we compared corn production for biofuel and a field with agrivoltaic. So I used data from the province of Piacenza. We compared 134 hectares of solar panels on the ground, so we have just energy production, and then 1,400 hectares of corn to be used for biogas. These are data from 2016. You can see that we produce together about 110 gigawatt per hour on a surface of more than 1,050 acres and 500 acres. Now we then compared an agrivoltaic field with corn to be used for biogas. And it showed that to have the same energy production, we just needed 123 hectares. So this is the final proof of how for energy production agrivoltaics is better than what we are doing now on our territory. This is kind of provoking results, but our aim is not just to produce energy, but is to produce energy and cultivating plants that can be corn for biogas or can be rice or other normal culture for food production. This result is due to the fact that the energy production for biogas from corn is 2.5 kilowatt per hour on square meter, while for agrivoltaics it's much higher. So in conclusion, we developed a simulation software. We know that corn is better cultivated with agrivoltaic systems and that is more resilient to climate change.
la superficie agricola mondiale in cui non si irriga l'80%.
We know that we can irrigate our fields, but there are many regions in the world where irrigation is not possible, so agrivoltaic has a really high potential in the world. And then we know that soil usage for energy production is more efficient with agrivoltaic. What are our perspectives? Our perspective now with REM Tec are to get our results verified and validated, because as you can see, we had results from software modeling. Now we will carry out tests on the field with corn and with tomatoes. We will need to carry out an economic and environmental analysis. You will hear about that from Mr. Agostini. He is a researcher in the INEA Association, and he is writing a PhD on this subject. And then we'll hear more about the economical aspect. And then, last but not least, we will work on improving agrivoltaic as much as possible and to develop its potential. We'll try to find the best way to set the panels and the best configuration, or to find the best orientation for our panels to improve yield. Now we know that if we compare yield profit and energy production profit, now energy is actually more profitable than yield. But then we will have the possibility to talk about that more in detail later. Thank you. We will now open the floor for questions. Is it all clear, or maybe it's a bit more complicated? Or maybe we'll have the Q&A at the end. Now I will give the floor to Professor Alessandro Agostini from about new technologies for environment. I work for the National Association for Environment, Energy, New Technologies, and Sustainable and Economic Development. I'm also a PhD student here. I will now present you my environmental analysis on greenhouse emissions. It's a new project. We have some preliminary results. We used lifespan analysis. I will now present you life cycle assessment. Then we will show the life cycle assessment of agrivoltaic system, and then an analysis of agrivoltaics combined with corn production for energy production. And then we'll see future perspectives. What is life cycle assessment? It's a standardized methodology which evaluates environmental performance of products and services by calculating greenhouse emissions to have data on the overall effectiveness of a product or services. The principles are the analysis of the whole life cycle to avoid overseeing greenhouse gas emissions in production or in other parts of the life cycle. That's why we analyze the whole life cycle. Then we have a focus on environment to show the impact on the entire environment, because sometimes you calculate greenhouse gas emissions, but then you don't calculate the environmental impact in other areas, such as particle emissions or some other kind of pollutions. So in this analysis we include all the environmental factors. We have a relative approach to compare products or services to each other, but usually you have to set a functional unit to compare all these products, and is based on transparency. Everything has to be transparent, data, methods. You have to explain why you're using such and such metrics and such methods. It's a really good method that, if well done, gives you reliable results. A life cycle assessment is made up of 4 steps. You have to set your goal or your aim, which is the question you're asking. The scope is how you're gonna find the answer to your question, which metrics you're using, and so on. Data quality. Then you have the inventory, so you have to calculate all the resources used, all the inputs. Then you have impact analysis, where all the impact are set out into categories, such as greenhouse emissions, methane emissions, and so on. And then you have the interpretation phase, which is the most important one, which is the phase when you have to find out if your method is adequate to answer the question you began with. This is the most crucial phase, and most of the time is the most discussed about phase. This research has the goal of evaluating the environmental impact of agrivoltaic, and also how to improve them from an environmental standpoint. Our scope, we compared 3 different configurations of solar tracking system. We have the dual axis, the monoaxis, and the static systems. We carried out tests over with a scope of 25 years, and we compared greenhouse gas emissions. We have a functional unit of the production of 1 megawatt of energy. We had the inventory which REM Tec provided us. It's the resources for production, packaging, transport, and so on. Then we use the software to give to all those steps, such as production, transport, and packaging, an emission, to correlate them with a certain emission of greenhouse gases. So there you can see that the impact is shown by those arrows. As you can see,
massa molto minore,
aluminium has
contributo alle emissioni di gas serra che è molto,
a really
proporzione molto maggiore.
high greenhouse gas emission, even though it is quantitatively less than steel.
Arriviamo ai risultati.
Here we have the results. So what is
Cattivissima performance.
clear is that the static system has a really bad performance.
Di altre fonti di energia.
These are greenhouse gas emissions for 1 megawatt of other source of energy. We have coal, we have combined cycles, we have natural gas, we have other photovoltaic system, we have wind power, and then we have an electricity mix
Praticamente il doppio del carbone.
from Italy.
Volte l'emissione energetica. Mentre gli altri
You can see that the static solar system has a really bad efficiency, while the other two systems do quite well. We try to understand why the static system fared so bad, and the reason was that each pole in the ground system had to be fixed with cement to withstand the weather, and that's why there was a lot of consumption of steel and cement. While with the second type of system, which used poles and tensor, there was a lot less steel used, and that is a good result overall.
competitivi.
It means that agrivoltaic is competitive.
Queste sono le quantità per un megawatt installato.
These are the quantities used for 1 installed megawatt, which is 1,000 tons of steel and 700 tons of concrete to have 1 installed megawatt.
Statico dove il singolo
With the old static system where a single pole sustained the panels.
Togliendo la configurazione statica,
Now,
guardiamo gli altri due.
Let's look at the other two systems.
Notiamo che in realtà sono emissioni molto
We can see
simili ad altri
that
sistemi
the
fotovoltaici.
greenhouse gas emissions are quite competitive,
Mix italiano.
and here we compare it with the electricity mix
Emissioni di
from
gas serra.
Italy. If we look at where the emissions come from, we can see that about 50% are the support systems and then 50% are the panels. The other parts, such as inverters and wiring and the tracking system, are not really relevant for this greenhouse gas production. And what is really important are the quantities of steel and concrete used. So even though those components need more efforts for production, their quantity is so low that their impact is not big. So here we get to the conclusion. The first conclusion is that a agrivoltaic system can reduce greenhouse gas emissions if compared to other sources of energy. What is fundamental for reducing the emission is to reduce the raw materials of the support systems, because we can reduce this emission only by using less raw materials. Then we know that aluminium compared to steel is not productive for greenhouse gas emissions, while in other scenarios it's the other way around, such as for mineral consumption, aluminium is actually better than steel because it's a more common element, while for steel we use rare mineral elements. So for mineral depletion, aluminium is actually better, but for greenhouse gas emission, steel is better. Then the limits of our study is that there are only preliminary results and that we analyzed all the greenhouse gas emissions, while in future study we will try to measure some other kinds of environmental impacts.
dagli organismi internazionali. La seconda parte del lavoro abbiamo combinato
The second part of our study is that we
il fotovoltaico alla produzione di
combined
per digestione anaerobica.
photovoltaic energy with energy from biogas made from corn.
Da Stefano, quindi sono 4 impianti che risultano alla
We had the same scope.
e 2 diversi
We had
sistemi di puntamento
4 systems
e
compared
abbiamo modellato anche la produzione
to
separata.
different system of dual axis
Per 25 anni,
panels
con
and then
unità
static.
funzionale 1 megajoule di elettricità. Abbiamo fatto gli inventari,
We had our inventory done.
di coltivazione, e
We
l'abbiamo
built a cultivation model and then we compared it
questa è la parte
with the photovoltaic. We had the photovoltaic part and the crop, the maize cultivation part.
quale se tu togli dal mercato dal terreno dedicato alla produzione di cibo e mangimi,
Then we analyzed another factor
di energia, quel cibo viene prodotto da altre parti,
which
aumentando la pressione sulle foreste, quindi la deforestazione.
is a factor that calculates deforestation in relation to land grabbing for energy production. So let's say that if in a certain territory you produce maize only for biogas, that food has to be produced somewhere else, such as in Brazil, and so you will have deforestation in the Amazonic forest.
Parte di produzione
We calculated also that factor,
e quindi abbiamo aggiunto questo fattore.
and so we had these
Simili a quelli di prima, per
results that are similar to the preceding one. The static solar energy system
sono sempre carbone,
do really bad. Then you have coal, you have energy mix, natural gas.
quindi togliendo i dati fuori scala
So let's narrow our results.
vediamo che il biassiale
You can see that the dual axis
di gas da mais coltivato col
system combined with maize production for biogas,
emissioni più basse,
it has lower
le emissioni sono
emissions
più basse a bassa densità rispetto a quello a bassa densità.
that the high density panels do better than the low density panels, and that the
delle due situazioni separate, quindi produzione di biogas da una parte e di
low density panels actually do worse than having
guardando questa slide, il
two
problema è il biogas
different cultures on two different fields.
a quello dell'electricity mix.
Here we see the results.
Il biogas sono
We see that emissions for biogas production are quite high,
circa 20
while
grammi di CO2 equivalente per megajoule elettrico,
photovoltaics
quindi ottime performance. Quindi il fatto di metterlo a bassa
does
densità
quite good.
diminuisce la quantità di energia prodotta e quindi le emissioni
So
del
having
biogas diventano
low density panels is not really convenient from an environmental point of view.
Questo l'ha già presentato Stefano, abbiamo fatto anche
You have already seen this chart.
un'analisi
We
della terra che
also
servirebbe per produrre
carried out an analysis to calculate the soil needed to produce energy with these systems.
il ratio è il totale dell'energia prodotta
As
diviso
you can
per
see,
gas coltivato.
you have a ratio which is the total compared with
10
the
volte,
biogas alone.
quindi è 10 volte minore l'utilizzo di terra, o
So
30
you
volte
can see
in caso di alta densità. Quindi più sono densi,
that with high density panels we need 2 to 3% less
conclusione,
soil.
di prima, i sistemi agrivoltaici possono ridurre
Now let's go back to our conclusion. The agrivoltaic system can consistently decrease the emission of greenhouse gases, that low density panels are not efficient,
la maggior positività in
and that
idrico, ma anche il fatto che taglia gli
in a scenario
emissioni che altre
of dry weather,
produzioni,
agrivoltaic system
garantisce la resilienza al cambiamento
give
climatico, quello che ci
a
aspetta
higher resilience to climate change.
climatici
And this is really important because in the future we will see more extreme climate phenomena. This means that with the agrivoltaic system we have a more stable production. And then the last result is that energy production with biogas has higher emissions than photovoltaic and then other kind of energy production. It uses more soil, about 30 times more. And it also produces other kinds of pollutions, particles, and so on. So it's more polluting. The limits are the same. We just evaluated greenhouse gas emissions and that our results are just preliminary. Then we have future perspectives. We need to improve and finalize our research. We need to include other kinds of environmental impact and economic analysis. And then I would also like to see how the smart photovoltaics, which means building a photovoltaic system which can be managed depending on the demand of the electric grid to avoid overproducing electric energy. In Italy, it can happen that you overproduce energy, so we should have a smart grid that avoids overproduction of electric energy. And I would like to analyze how to integrate smart photovoltaic with electric grids. This is one of the future perspectives. That's all. Up until now, we created a model for sunlight radiation, and we linked it with a growth model. As Giancarlo said earlier, what is really interesting is having a calculation, since these solar panels can be regulated, and today we regulate them to maximize energy production, but in the future, where energy could cost 5 cents per kilowatt hour, it would be interesting to calculate how to improve crop growth. We didn't do that calculation for crop growth maximization, but it could be really interesting to define how to vary the inclination of the panels to maximize in a given territory crop production and to calculate which is the best moment to change the panel's inclination to give more radiation to the soil. And you could do that calculation by comparing energy cost with maize cost, for example, and then to optimize your system so that the software knows whether to let more sunlight hit the soil, maybe because it's a crucial moment for crop growth and the cost of crop is such that that is more efficient, while at some other times, if there is an overproduction of energy, you could do the calculation and know what is more effective for you. So in the future, we will try to
fare decidere il
have
modello se è il caso
more
di
data
produrre
to
più energia.
insert the data and then let the software decide whether it's more convenient to produce more energy or more crop.
Break di 15 minuti.
Well, now we'll have a 15 minutes break
Pasticcino e poi ci vediamo qua per la seconda parte.
and we will then move on to the second part of the conference.